Good morning, everyone, and greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all my Muslim brothers and sisters. And today I'm going to do a reaction video of a recent release from the Deenshow. Brother Eddie, barakallah fi for creating this video. He does a great, fantastic job, and I'm very proud to have him as a brother in Islam, and I'm learning quite a lot. I'm a regular subscriber and I benefit a lot from his special guests who, mashallah, have great wisdom and knowledge to share with everyone. Now, the reason why I'm actually going to create this reaction video is because of what's the current state that's happened yesterday with the conflict between the Palestinians and the so-called state, Israel, the occupiers of Palestine, the Zionist occupiers. And I actually feel, I watched a little bit of the clips, and I feel that they touch a lot of good points to address a recent, very brief discussion with an East European friend of mine. And may Allah guide him to Islam as well, who basically said, it's a very similar conflict between what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. I'm not taking any sides here, and I feel they should not conflict over religion or race, and they shouldn't be people shouldn't be trying to expand their borders as if it was one country trying to invade another country, and Israel has every right to defend itself and protect its borders and so on. And I wanted to just give a little bit of history on exactly how Zionism came about. And it's not all Jews that are in support of this fake state that exists today, the occupation of Palestine, and a lot of the things that most Jews that are Orthodox Jews or people that follow and abide by the Torah, they're against this particular occupation anyway. And I wanted to also inform him that this is not a black and white kind of scenario. It's a very complex situation, and we need to go back in history and understand exactly how the formation of the Zionist cult started and how they hijacked an ethnic group and a religion, and they used it for their own self-interest. So it's exactly the same as any cult that starts up, or a terror group that starts up and claim to be belonging to a particular religion, and they use that in their manifesto and say we are fighting for this and that, or we are trying to establish a racist state that will be exclusively for a particular race. Now, as Muslims, we believe that we all created from one creator, and we have one father, which is Adam, and from Adam we are all children of Adam. Therefore, we are all from the same family. There's no such thing as racism. There's no such thing as discrimination between people. We're all equal, and we all have a right to peace, dignity, and freedom. We all have the freedom to practice our life, our way of life, without imposing on other people. So therefore, people should respect each other's boundaries. This is the Islamic stance. We all respect each other, we all value each other, and we're here on this planet as trustees, and we should cooperate together to be productive and contribute to society and help each other, protect the weak and vulnerable, and grow as a whole community, as one family, united. However our belief are, whatever our gender is, or creed, or what we choose to believe or disbelieve, it's everyone's private business. What you believe and what you do in your private life is your private business. No one has a right to intervene in that. But going back to this, where these group of people that were inspired by white supremacists, they were inspired by racism, and all these movements that existed at the time, who then pushed Hitler into taking this action against an ethnic group of people, such as the Jews at the time, and persecuted the Jews and caused them harm and distress. The people that reached out to the Jews were the Muslims. Look at in history, the Muslims protected the Jews. They gave them shelter, protection, hid them. It was the Muslim countries or the Middle Eastern countries that gave them refuge, invitation, come, let's be hospitable to you, let's look after you, let's protect you. And it's not from the Muslims claiming that they did such things, but it was the Jews themselves that brought this to light and showed how the Muslims and the Arabs were hospitable, invited them to their homes, protected them, hid them away from the dangers of those who tried to harm them. Even if we go even further back in history, when the Jews were persecuted by the Europeans and the Christians, or people that claim to be Christians, it was the Muslim Ummah that invited them in and gave them equal rights to practice their faith, their way of life, and gave them even positions in authority in governments, allowed them to thrive and prosper. And according to the Jewish rabbis, according to the Jews themselves, historians, they were also said that the golden age with the Muslims was the golden age for the Jews as well. And many Jews reverted to Islam. Little do you know. Many intermarried. And so many of the people in the Middle East today and all over the world that are Muslims, they are also part ethnically Jew. Because a Jew is a race, is not a religion. And likewise, when Musa alayhi salam, peace and blessing be upon him, and Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, Isa alayhi salam, they were ethnically from the descendants of of Israel. Israel is the name of a prophet. We should be aware of this as well. So, as descendants of Bani Israel, descendants of a prophet from the lineage of Ishaq alayhi salam, they were given a mission to propagate Islam, to call people to the one true God, Allah. And they did, like in the case of Musa, when he went to Pharaoh and invited him into Islam, and invited him to worship the one true God and stop his claiming that he is divine and all that stuff. But the reply of Pharaoh, because of all his power and all his might and the army that he had and all the superpower that Egypt was in at the time, he grew arrogant. He fell in the same sin and mistake of Satan, who looked at Adam and said, oh, look at Adam, he's inferior than me, he's an inferior race, I'm a superior race, I'm stronger than him, why should I bow down to him? Why should I look at Adam as in a senior position, as a representative on earth? Why would I give him respect if I'm a stronger person, I'm a stronger being? Instead of understanding that he was ordered by the Creator. And we as Muslims, when we submit to the Creator, Allah, we say we hear and obey. We don't question the command that's given to us. So when Allah tells us, be humble, give charity, pray, fast Ramadan, we say we hear and obey. We don't say, no, I'm not convinced with that. Let me think, it's not good for me. It's not good for my selfish needs. If I'm giving charity, then I'm reducing my wealth. It's not up to me to decide whether to accept or reject. As long as I've decided to submit my will to God, I have to accept all the criteria and all the conditions, all the commandments that are given to me. And amongst the people that obeyed Musa alayhi salam were not just ethnically Jew, but they were also Egyptians. From amongst the Egyptians were the magicians of Pharaoh, the magicians of Pharaoh, when they recognized the sign that Moses came with, they submitted. And amongst the people that submitted from Egypt as well was Asya, and the hairdresser for the children of Pharaoh, the hairdresser, also submitted to Islam. Many Egyptians submitted to Islam at the time of Musa alayhi salam, and the declaration of faith at that time was, there is no one worthy of worship except Allah, and Musa Rasulullah. Musa is the messenger of Allah. This was the declaration at the time of Musa. And when Isa came along as well, he asked his people, the people that can submit and accept to submit to their will, to the will of God, was to make that declaration. There is no one worthy of worship except Allah, and Isa Rasulullah. Islam was from the very beginning of creation, my friends, my brothers and sisters. And respect one another and cooperate together for good. Now that's my little introduction. However, I believe this particular video that was recorded, titled Dr. Omar Suleiman Responds to Jordan Peterson, go to hell, because Jordan Peterson is very ignorant in the aspects of geopolitical. He has very little knowledge in politics. He has very little knowledge in religion. In fact, he has zero knowledge in Islam. It's more of a publicity stunt for him. And my advice to Jordan Peterson, go get an education. Yes, you might be called Dr. Jordan Peterson, but you're a specialist in a very tiny drop in a vast ocean. In fact, you have very little knowledge, not even a drop, not even an electron of an atom. So you go get an education, learn about Islam. Take the advice of the people that you spoke to, the Muslims that you spoke to in the past, and read the Quran with an open-minded, open heart. Understand Islam. Understand the Quran. Understand the words of God. But what can I say? You have to go online and make such tweets as, Muslims go to hell, Palestinians go to hell. What kind of a shallow man are you? What kind of an ignorant man are you to make such a statement? And I am proud of Dr. Omar Suleiman for responding back and saying, you go to hell, Jordan Peterson. I totally respect him. He grew in status in my eyesight. I have more respect for Dr. Omar Suleiman for standing up, and many of the other brothers, fine brothers, that responded to Jordan Peterson on that. So this particular video answers a lot of the points that my friend was kind of, messages me on social media and saying, well, there should be two equal forces. He doesn't understand that the Palestinians are under occupation. They're being cut off from all their human rights, all necessities. Even water supply is being cut off on them. The land's being stolen. It's being hijacked. They're under invasion. And also, the Zionist agenda was initially looking at Uganda as their state of Israel. And had the British not given them Palestine, because Palestine was under the occupation of the British, when they split up all the Muslim land and the Middle East across all the winning parties, such as France and Britain and so on, and they were trying to negotiate, okay, I'll take Egypt, you take Algeria, you take this particular area, you take Jordan. And they were dividing the lands, the Muslim lands, other people's countries amongst themselves, robbing resources, just like what the British did to India, what they did to Egypt. Many people don't know about the crimes that the British did to the Egyptians. They massacred 500,000 men. They kidnapped them. And they forced them into wars. They used them as human shields when they were fighting the Germans. They didn't even know what they were used for. They were used as human shields. That is what the British did. They went into Egyptian towns and they mass raped Egyptian girls, children even. And then they massacred them. There are mass graves in Egypt left behind from the British. This is the crimes of the British, but we're not here to talk about the British. We're talking here about the IDF, the crimes by the Israelis on the Palestinians. It's exactly the same as what the British did to the Egyptians. It's exactly the same as what the French did to the Algerians. So it's no surprise. The very same criminals, they gave someone else's property, someone else's land to another group of criminals. That is why they're united. Because there's just one criminal, another criminal, they're both criminals, and they want to cause corruption in the land. Therefore, they go out and persecute innocent civilians. They steal, rob, rape, destroy. They are just basically fulfilling the works of Satan. That is their agenda, to spread corruption in the land, destroy. They're behind every single war that exists. And I'm not saying it's the citizens' fault, because the citizens are innocent. It's the people that are in power, divide and conquer. They're turning people against each other. They're distracting innocent civilians, the British and so on. Innocent people, working folk, middle class, lower class, skilled, unskilled, normal people, people from the 99%. They want to dominate the world and rob even their own citizens. What they do, they cause a decoy. They create an enemy. The Muslims are the enemies. It's the Arabs that are the enemies. It's the blacks that are the enemies. That's what they do. They try to distract people. They try to divide citizens, turn them against each other. They start to blame immigrants. Well, the reality is this whole planet belongs to the Creator, and He trusted all of us to look after it. So everyone has a right to live anywhere in the world. Everyone has a right to be in any country. We shouldn't have even closed borders. We should welcome each other because we're all family, irrespective of our skin color or our creed or our gender. We should be welcome everywhere. We should be hospitable to each other. We should respect each other's opinion. We have a right to disagree at points without reaching out for violence. This is how we're supposed to be. United together, working for a common good, for a common interest for the human race as a whole. That should be our focus. But unfortunately, some people are racist by nature. They get inspired by this idea that God created, their race, or because they belong to a certain genetics group, then they are superior race, and all the other races are inferior. Well, God is not racist. He would never discriminate against you. You get to choose if you were born an Arab, or you get to choose if you were born a Jew, or do you choose your parents? You don't. You just come into this world with certain traits and attributes, positive and negative, weaknesses and strengths, and you have to work. You get a set of cards and you have to play with these cards. I'm just giving you as an example. You use the tools that are available to you. So for God does not discriminate, and He's not unjust. He's just. He gives everyone different traits and attributes. And the way we are supposed to do is we're supposed to complete each other. We're supposed to value each other, because together everyone achieves more. We cooperate for a good. So my weakness is someone else's strength. Someone else's weakness is my strength. So we're supposed to complete each other, not point out faults in each other. Someone might be more eloquent in speech. Another person might be good at mathematics. I'm going on a little bit because I know people might find it a little bit difficult to understand these concepts, that we all belong to the same human race. There's no discrimination. God does not discriminate between us. So anyway, I don't want to go too long. What I'll do is I'll play the video first, inshallah, and then I'll make some comments. Maybe I'll cut in between while the video's playing and make a few comments, but I'll try to hold off until the end. Then I'll make my conclusion. And you'll see also that brother Eddie brings on really good, credible guests, as well as he uses good video clips as well in his presentation, showing that even the Jews are against this. Even Israeli citizens are against this. And it clearly illustrates these points. So my European brother, my friend, who thinks this is an equal war and it wasn't the right for the Palestinians to mount this attack or to reclaim their land, to fight back, to defend themselves, their rights, their God-given human rights. He's wrong. This is not like any other battle. It's not a border dispute between two nations or two countries, or someone's disputing over a property or a piece of land. I'm the one that hold the title deed to that land. No, you don't. I bought it. I have the right. And I bought this property. Hand over the keys. It's not a dispute. It's not a legal dispute between, landowner or property owner. This is, you're living in your house and a criminal broke in, armed criminal, raped your wife, raped your daughter, massacred your children in front of your eye, and then pushed you out of the house and then shot you dead. It's a criminal. You, as a man, you have every right to defend your house, every right to defend your mother, your wife, your daughter, your children. You have every right to defend, do whatever it takes to protect your own property, protect your own family. No one has a right to harm you or your children. So you have every right to defend yourself. So don't blame someone who's trying to defend himself and his family because a criminal's broke into the house, a burglar, an armed burglar came in. You cannot call that person. You should call that person a hero. If he kills that criminal, if he fights back, he's a hero. He's brave. You call him a man. And you call that criminal a coward. And the mainstream media seems to twist things. They seem to put the liars on the mainstream and call the truthful people as people that are liars. They seem to twist everything. They shadow ban people that speak the truth. They have no benefit by speaking the truth. They're just trying to tell the world as it is. They're showing the facts. But the mainstream media like to fabricate because they have an agenda. The governments fabricate because they have an agenda. They have an agenda to push. They're trying to divide people. They're trying to reduce the populations, in particular Muslim populations and Africans and non-whites. If you're not the correct skin tone, they want to destroy you. There'll come a time when they wouldn't even give you any medication or try to serve you in any way because you're the wrong skin color. We're turning into a racist society, a racist world, because it's run by racists. And until today, in the UK, in France, there are racists. Why? If we're all one family. We're all brothers and sisters. Why do we have racists among us? Why is the KKK still around, but under different names? Why do we have this in this, this era in our life? So inshallah, I gave you a little bit of my things. I'm going to play the video and let you enjoy it, inshallah, and then we'll make comments. I'm just really sad of the state what's going on. But yeah, let's see what Brother Eddie and his guests have to say about all this, inshallah. I'm just going to stay up here and I'm going to play the video and watch it with you, inshallah.
We had very interesting, some very interesting developments. And again, disclaimer: it's very sad. Anytime innocent life is taken, human life is precious life, and we'd like nothing more than to have peace with all of our neighbors. What do you think about that?
Of course, that's an Islamic concept. Community cohesion, living together, coexisting, living side by side, helping one another in that which we have common ground on is definitely, these are all Islamic values that we uphold and live for and stand by.
In the midst of all this, you have Jordan Peterson, who the last time when we met, actually, we were actually praising Jordan Peterson. Do you remember? And now he actually tweeted, and we'll go through some of these tweets. He's saying, give him hell. He's talking, enough is enough. Now, we're not going to get into some details, specifics here, but just generally, some generals here that we'll be discussing. So, and then you had Omar Suleiman stepping up and telling him to go to hell. In the midst of all this, you have Jordan Peterson. I know he had him in it. He is nice to see.
I'm quite surprised, and yeah, it's. I mean,
let me get through these.
Sure,
hold on. So we got our brother Sheikh Omar Suleiman stepping up and telling Jordan Peterson to go to hell. Subhanallah. And then you have, and these are all under the tweets under there. Daniel steps in. He says, "How does it feel?" He's talking to Jordan Peterson to be a cheap prostitute. He's talking to Jordan Peterson. You have Samira Khan, owned. She says, own. You have Amir Kolan. I had him recently on the program. He's telling Jordan Peterson, and you can see a lot of Muslims actually respected Jordan Peterson, right? And you were one of
those for the right reasons.
Yeah. And then he says, when I watched Jordan Peterson being played on Daily Wire by Little Ben and Netanyahu, I thought he would be intelligent enough to figure out that he was being played, but I guess the benzos, the money, has done their damage. And you got Robert Carter saying, "Yeah, that's it, Peterson. Earn your new paycheck, you little hoe." He's called, wow.
Oh, boy.
Oh, so
that hasn't been taken down.
That's
allowed on Twitter.
Yeah. So your thoughts when you see this? Obviously, it's a declaration of war right now. With Israel, we've seen operations and whatnot, but now it's I guess it's
this nonsense, this oppression that's been happening to the Palestinian people for decades now, if not more, is something that obviously is and it's very sad to see that the American people have not woken up to this yet. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the means of social media, YouTube and these smartphones and so on and so forth, I think a lot of people have somewhat more access, definitely more than before, because before you'd only get the standard narrative that you're going to get from that part of the world regarding as to what's happening between the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as they'd like to put it, when in reality it's not the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's the oppression, the injustice, the ongoing injustices that keep perpetuating against the Palestinian people. I mean, this is literally an apartheid that's existing and transpired in the 21st century. In 2023, this is happening where people are not allowed, right, to even access to basic necessities. And the average American, I think, is simply not aware as to what is going on and what has been taking place in that part of the world. A lot of people think, oh, it's just these crazy nutcase Palestinians who have absolutely nothing to do than to roam the streets and to cause havoc and to cause damage, right, to the Jewish people. That's not what's happening over there.
I want to get your reaction to this, and this is what probably got a lot of people upset with Jordan Peterson. If he's trying to really be a man of peace or someone promoting peace,
it doesn't seem like it.
Why wouldn't he try to? This is self-evident. It's something that you look at. I've had Miko Pilid. He's wrote in a book, The General's Son. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. He's an Israeli Jew. He's someone who's putting his neck on the line, coming out and speaking against these injustices that are happening.
When Palestine is free, people like him are going to be ashamed that they did this. He's going to be embarrassed that he did this. There's a famous rabbi who lived in Jerusalem. He was one of the anti-Zionist rabbis, like Rabbi Weiss that you interviewed. And he was interviewed by a student of his, and the student said to him, if you were in charge today, what would be the first thing that you would do? And this rabbi said, the first thing I would do is I would ask the Palestinians to come back. And the student says, why? What are you talking about? They're terrorists. They want to kill us. And the rabbi, his name is Rabbi Amram Blau. And the rabbi said, who told you that? Who told you that the Arabs were going to kill us? We had great relations with the Muslims and the Arabs back in the day. You know, his family lived in Hebron and his family lived in Jerusalem that always had, you know, Jewish minorities. He said we had great relations. We shared the same values. We shared a similar culture. You know, we all treated each other with respect. It was only when the Zionists came at the beginning of the 20th century that the terrorism began, that the violence began, and it was initiated not by the Palestinians, not by the Arabs and the Muslims, but by the Zionists.
You know, open air prism, basic, you know, on one side, you got people full running water, electricity all day. Imagine you're on the other side, and only for a fraction of the time, maybe 5% of the time, you get that running water, you get dirty water, you get electricity 24/7 on one side, across the street on the other side of the fence, you got it for only, you know, a fraction of the time, maybe one few hours a week or something, right? So basic, you know, human life is not being, kids are being thrown in jail. You got babies being killed. You got
this is daily. This is daily.
And these are people, credible people. You got Rabbi Weiss. I've had him on the show.
That Palestine has the right to be free, and that is unacceptable to occupy Palestine. It is unacceptable what these Zionists are doing.
So it's not, the thing is, it's not like a Jew-Muslim thing. And that's why I wanted you to react to this next one. This is a university professor. It's one thing us talking about this history, but we're going to show here, because that's the greater scheme of things. If Jordan Peters sees this, he can actually do some good. He can call people to really, you know, come into the past, present, and try to do some good with that platform, instead of, you know, what's he saying? Just go get them. Indiscriminate. We know what happens when then you have indiscriminate killing, bombing of civilians who can't get out. Like, you know, I want to make this very clear. Our stance is the Prophet Muhammad's stance that, you know, I'm putting this hadith on the wall: do not kill any child, woman, elderly. You know, the practice of treachery, you know, uprooting tree. This is like the commandments of war. This is pretty straight, you know, killing one innocent child, non-combatant is as you kill the world. So this is our stand. This is, you know, we love nothing more but peace, but just giving the greater context of things. Here, let's get into this video and get your take on this, so people can see the history of how Muslims have really been towards Jewish people. This is not a Muslim-Jewish thing. This is when you have the Zionists who are taking charge.
Good differentiation there.
Yeah. Okay, so the context here, we'll just play a clip, is now Muslims came and conquered Jerusalem. Omar, head of state, he conquers now, and they had done, you know, all sorts of, you know, treachery and whatnot. Now his chance is to take revenge, right? But he didn't, and he did the same thing Prophet Muhammad did when he came in 10,000 strong to Mecca, and he ended up showing mercy, spread the peace, spread the food. He's following the example of Prophet Muhammad. After that, Salahuddin Ayyubi would do the same thing. We're making it short and concise. People can go check this history out. You don't get to learn this usually in school. This professor's teaching this history in school. Now he's getting to the point where Omar, radiallahu anh, he's saying, like, where are the Jews? And watch what happens next.
At that point, the Caliph says, I want to see the Temple Mount. And Sophronius goes, why? And the Caliph goes, because it's holy. It's holy to everybody. It's holy to Christians, it's holy to Jews, it's holy to Muslims. And Sophronius goes, nah, we haven't been treating it as holy to anybody. And Umar ibn al-Khattab goes, what do you mean? And so Sophronius says, so after we tore down the second temple of Solomon, when we conquered Palestine, we turned the Temple Mount into a garbage dump to punish the Jews. And the Caliph goes, what do you mean? And Sophronius goes, yeah, there's like 500 years of refuse on that thing. It's just a garbage dump. And he goes, show me. They walk up to the Temple Mount, and the Caliph can't believe what he's looking at. He falls on his knees, and he begins clearing the garbage by his hands. His army sees their leader on his knees clearing garbage, and they run up and they start clearing the garbage themselves. And they clear the garbage off the Temple Mount. The Caliph goes, okay, I want to meet some of the Jews living in Jerusalem. And Sophronius goes, there are no Jews in Jerusalem. And the Caliph goes, what do you mean there's no Jews in Jerusalem? The city is holy to the Jews. How could there be no Jews? And he says, well, us Christians, we pretty much murder them every chance we get. We really hate Jews. In fact, in the war we just did against the Persians, the Jews sided with the Persians. And so we murdered 20,000 Jews in Jerusalem and completely purged the city of its remaining Jewish population. And Omar ibn al-Khattab goes, no, this is wrong. You can't do this. And so he turns to a convert to Islam, a Jewish convert to Islam, and he says, I need you to find me 80 Jewish families that were willing to volunteer to move to Jerusalem so we can reestablish a Jewish presence in this city. And that's how the Muslims conquered Jerusalem. And that's the stuff that's left out of your history book. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, subhanallah, it's very true. And it's not just at the time of Umar ibn Khattab when he entered Jerusalem, but also throughout history. In any war that took place in Europe and Jews were persecuted, it was the Muslims and the Muslim countries and the Middle Eastern countries that opened their arms and gave them food, refuge, shelter, safety, protecting them. And this is what's ordered to us in the Quran from Allah. Anybody, any human life, irrespective of their belief, irrespective of their gender, irrespective of their ideology or anything else, if they come to you asking you for help, whether it's charity, whether it's safety, protection against another enemy, you are obliged to protect them. They're a human being, they're a creation of Allah. Their belief or disbelief is a different matter. Allah's the judge of that. But you are obliged, it's an obligation, fard, to protect them. We can't even insult them. We can't even criticize their belief or their gods or anything at all. We have to respect them. I did my research, I chose this way of life. You did your research, you chose a different way of life. At the end, the judge is Allah, the creator, and that's it. They will know when they go to the next world, next life, and they discover that the Muslims were right, and everything was right. They'll see the reality and then they'll be sorry about it. But that's the judgment belongs to Allah. No one can be the judge and say you're going to hell, you're going to heaven, this is that, you're wrong, I'm right, you should take my way of life. No one has a right to do that. And you see here that Umar Khattab, the leader of the Muslim, the Khalifa, first thing he did, he cleaned up the place himself. He's a leader, head of the state, and he goes down on his knees, picking up the rubbish from the Temple Mount. And then he asks for the Jews to come back and re-establish themselves, because they belong everywhere. They are distributed all over the world. They intermarry. We respect them, we value their contributions, and so on. But they should respect our way of life, we respect their way of life, everyone's in peace. And this is exactly what was going on pre the invasion, pre the occupation of Palestine. Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, whatever, they all lived side by side in peace and harmony. And that is why some Jews stand up against the state of Israel, the terrorist state, shall I say, the occupiers, the criminals, the hijackers. That's why they stand up against them and they say this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable according to our ethnicity, our culture. It's not acceptable according to the Torah. So I don't know where they got this from, but the supporters are all Satanists. The people that are pushing the Zionism forward are secular people. They're Satanists. They're not even believing in God. They don't even believe in the God of Moses, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's all stand up against injustice of the so-called state of Israel. And you've seen many examples so far. Mikhail Peled, the general's son, who's an Israeli citizen, who's ethnically Jew as well. And he's saying this is unacceptable. This does not make sense. So there are people that are decent human beings. It's nothing to do with your skin color or your ethnicity. Stop being a racist. Get racism out of your heart. Racism does not belong in Islam. It does not belong in any creed. And the only people that are going to be benefiting by pumping racism in society are the heads of state, the politicians, people in the positions of authority, the traitors to the human race, the traitors to mankind. So be aware of this. Be aware of this hidden agenda to divide us and to conquer us and to manipulate the world into their own sick ideologies and sick way of life. Those in power are corrupt. And many of them are all over. I'm not talking about one leader. I'm not talking about one country, political government, or the people in one country's government that's doing that. There's corruption everywhere, all over the Middle East, all over the world, all over Europe. They're all buddies at the end. Those that make it appear as if they're enemies, and they're like one country's government against another country's government, and as if they're doing that. But it's all a game. They're playing us. But what the IDF soldiers, if you're a soldier in the military, in the British military or the Israeli military, the IDF or anything like that, what you should do, you should care about yourself right now and put down your weapons and refuse to kill another human being, irrespective of who they are. You should refuse that. Because that Palestinian is your brother, is a brother to the Jew. The Arabs are brothers to the Jews. In fact, we're cousins. Ishaq, Ismail, we're brothers. Cousins. We descended from different lineage. And many of us also are mixed. Some part European, part Arab, part, Arab, Jew, mixed between all three, going back in generations. We're all intermarried. There was no discrimination between people. So we should root out racism from our hearts and not follow blindly the orders that are given us by people that are profiting out of conflicts. I hope you're enjoying this stream right now. I'm enjoying it. I'm learning a lot. But it's making my blood boil, because this should not go on in this day and age. We should be more intelligent in this. We should have got to that level where all these advancements in knowledge and science and so on, to a little bit more, be more mature and recognize that we all have a right to live in this world with respect and dignity, peace and harmony. We should all respect each other's way of life. And whatever choices we make, even if we agree to disagree, it doesn't matter. I respect your point of view. You respect my point of view. You don't want to take my point. That's fine. You're free. You're free to do whatever you want with your life. I'm free to choose my own life. Pursue whatever career you want. Follow your passion. Follow your dream. I follow my passions and my dreams, although it might be a different direction than yours. So each person should look inwards, look into themselves, and focus and compete against themselves. Only try to be a more productive human being. And if everyone does that, and then looks at the people that are less fortunate than them, and thinks to himself, every day I'm going to try to serve one human being or help someone out, even help someone to cross the street. Something trivial, something very simple, very small. Or I'm going to donate a small amount of my wealth. Every day I'm going to contribute, say, £1 to this cause or whatever. You decide how much you can do. No one's telling you to contribute everything that you have. But do something. Be a giver. Because that's our purpose, to serve the many. For service to many leads to greatness. And I continue the stream. I just thought I'd interrupt there, interject, and give you my opinion so far. But inshallah, I'll try to summarize at the end. Enjoy the stream.
Crazy. Because isn't that an amazing story?
That's the stuff that's left out of your history
powerful.
books. If we would have just talked about it's one thing, but now you have an academic, this is a professor. We know this history,
right?
But this is the stuff they're leaving out of the history books
Intentionally.
So why would, if Muslims hated Jews, why would they want to, Omar, he's repopulated, there's no, I mean, do they understand that this is like no Jews in Jerusalem? They're gone. They've been being killed. You know, the Christians are killing them. And he's like, where are they at? He's looking for the Temple Mount. It's covered, with garbage, how many hundreds of years. He restores it. And then he basically gets 80 families to repopulate Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Look at the respect he's even showing the Jews. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are they your enemy because of that?
No, I think we have, as you mentioned earlier, I think there's the benchmarker. I think the differentiating factor is, are we talking about Zionists here, or are we speaking of Jews and Christians? I think there's a big, I mean, you have many Jewish, right? Just so I'm not accused of being an anti-Semite, because today, if you criticize, just by criticizing, not Judaism, but, Zionism and what the state of Israel is doing, you're immediately deemed an anti-Semite, right? It's as if there's absolutely no room for legitimate criticism. That's just but a, Pollyannish daydreaming. You cannot criticize what they're doing. Right? There's no room for that. Absolutely. Zip, zilch, nada, not a scintilla, right? Unfortunately. And this is what makes, things, it exacerbates the matter even more. So the problem is not necessarily having an issue with them, because they're Christian or because they're Jews. We have many, even during the high time or the golden age of Islam, it's not like it's a fantasy. Community cohesion and coexistence, it's not a fantasy. People talk about it like it's a fantasy, as though it never existed in history before. You had Muslims living next to Christians, Christians living next to Jews, Jews living next to Muslims, and certain Jews actually occupied certain positions even in the Islamic government, right? So it's not, our beef here is not necessarily with, because they're Jews or because they're Christians. I mean, we as Muslims, we're obviously allowed to marry Jewish women. Men are allowed to marry Christian women. So if the beef was necessarily with Jews or Christians, then Muslim men would not be allowed to marry Jewish women or Christian women. But the beef is not necessarily there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You make me think of something else here. I think we, as Americans, I think we really have to move beyond this idea. I mean, at first, I think it was we could get away with being gullible, naive, unaware, and ignorant of what is taking place in the world. But I think today, with the proliferation of social media, smartphones, and the access to the internet, I don't think we can get away with the idea that, the world has a problem with us simply because of our freedoms and liberties. Mm-hmm. This is just asinine. I think the world has when you commit atrocity after atrocity to a people, when we have a bad track record here, although I'm kind of shifting gears here a bit, we're talking about Zionists, now I'm talking about what we're, as Americans here, what we're doing across the globe or in the world. We have to kind of look at ourselves and see, well, have we been good stewards around the world? Yes, we're helping the poor, we're helping the needy, but I think we've been the cause of a lot of carnage in the world. And I think it is time for us as Americans to own up and to speak to that and acknowledge perhaps maybe why some parts of the world have a problem with us. And it's not because of our, liberties or freedoms. Maybe it's because what we've done to them over the decades.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the reasoning for, you have someone like Omar Suleiman who's telling Jordan Peterson to go to hell. he's got him worked. He's pretty worked up.
I'm
Why would he? I mean, what's the context now? You would think like to
I am elated to see someone like Omar Suleiman. كبر في عيني صراحة الرجل. I'm بسم الله ما شاء الله يعني good move that we're moving beyond the whole compassionate talk about love and mercy. I think that's good.
We got a lot of compassion, love in this. We follow the mercy, the prophet of mercy.
But we don't want to overdo it.
I got you.
Where we become the pushovers.
Yes.
Yeah. So kudos to Dr. Omar Suleiman.
Yes, absolutely. And then you have over here, they're pretty much, a lot of people are saying the same thing. So if Jordan Peterson is sincere and he's reading some of these comments and he's like, there's got to be something there. Like, everyone like from the comments here are pretty much saying there's all bought. He's pretty much bought. He pretty much sold his soul.
You know and I don't know where to begin when it comes with Jordan Peterson, because when the man is a mountain of knowledge, a very knowledgeable person and a very smart and intelligent person. No one can take that away from him. And this is not me saying, hey, let's bring him to our next conference. Please, this is not what I'm getting at here. But I've noticed when he starts speaking about issues out of his domain, he really starts to speak nonsense. من تكلم كما يقولون من تكلم في غير فنه أتى بالعجائب. Whomsoever speaks outside of his own field of expertise will come with very wild, ludicrous, and bizarre ideas. And unfortunately, this is what's happening with him. So a bit of humility on his part. يعني صراحة it's a disgrace for a man of that stature and that man of popularity, really, to utter nonsense like this.
Rabbi Wise,
it's disappointing.
I've had Rabbi Shapiro on the program and other Jews.
The incompatibility between Judaism and Zionism. Many Jews believe wrongly that Zionism is either part of Judaism or is compatible with Judaism or is even the main part of Judaism. All of those are actually false. Zionism was created to negate Judaism. Zionism was created to replace Judaism. The differences between Zionism and Judaism are vast. They're vast and profound. The propaganda that the Zionists have churned out for the past 100 years have confused and conflated Zionism and Judaism such that when the average person walks down the street, he thinks that the state of Israel is the Jewish state, he thinks that Zionism is Judaism, and he doesn't know the difference. This group of Jews here are students of the students of the late Satmar Rabbi Reb Yoel Teitelbaum, who was the greatest disseminator of the clarity regarding the difference between Judaism and Zionism.
Miko's a friend of mine. I consider he's someone out there who's speaking the truth, and I would really recommend people who want to know the truth to go look into some of their work.
Israelis really believe that the IDF is the most moral army in the world. The Israeli media is playing this shameful role of collaborating with the occupation. The government, the army, the secret services don't want you to tell. And the consumers, the readers and the viewers don't want to hear and don't want to know. One day someone will ask, what happened here? How come that this society is living in this denial? I try to whistle in the darkness, but I don't think it has any influence. On the contrary, you see that everything goes to the opposite direction.
So what's the point? I remember I asked my father the same question one day. He said, well, I don't want them to be able to say that they didn't know.
Yeah.
They cannot say they didn't know.
I mean, these are...
Norman Finkelstein?
No, okay.
I mean, what a man.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Yeah, may Allah guide him to Islam. He is vocal. He does not know the art of sugarcoating. Bismillah, mashallah. May Allah guide him to Islam, right?
But imagine if we're chanting, if you see something like this is not what God conscious people who are, no Muslims should be chanting death to Moses, or even in Islam you have don't curse their gods. What does Allah say? Or
ولا تسبوا الذين يدعون من دون الله فيسبوا الله عدوا بغير علم.
Show this quip real quick. What do you think when you see that? I mean, again, I don't have.
It's diabolical. It really comes off as being satanic and diabolical. I mean, it's not enough that you're oppressing the people, but you're finding joy and taking pleasure in doing so.
We don't have our way of life, submission to the Creator, not the creation, doesn't teach us to hate a certain group of people because they're a certain group of people. You have many Jews who actually even accept Islam, live peacefully, even if they don't accept. There isn't their life and property, everything they have. They have certain rights in Islam that now cannot even be transgressed. Their right to worship, their right to live their lives according
even
to
the church, even the churches, even the synagogues.
Church.
We as Muslims do not have the right to desecrate those areas or to vilify those places, because Islam does consider, although they're not, it's not a masjid, but Islam still consider those. We still consider those places to be sacred places. They are not to be touched.
When I had Rabbi Weiss on, and Miko Bilad and many of them confirmed this, that even before the Zionists is more people who are atheists. They really don't even have much. This is more of an atheist, more in line with the Bolsheviks and people like this. But you have good people like this, like Miko Bilad and the rabbi, and they come out and they talk about even the chief rabbi at the time, because people don't know that the Christians are also being oppressed there. Even Christians are.
I was
going to
mention that. Yes, they are.
So what's happening there is that before this occupation, you had Christians, Muslims, and Jews. They were all together, living in peace.
Before 1948, they were living. There were Jews there. There were Muslims and Christians there, all living side by side, and they got along just fine.
Yeah, they watched each other's kids, right? There was actual peace.
Yeah,
and then the chief rabbi at that time was saying, "No, this is not. Do not do this." They were like, I remember doing this interview with the rabbi,
right?
And Rabbi Shapiro, he holds one of the greatest conferences, biggest conferences. They had thousands of rabbis coming together, who are really against this whole this whole movement that's causing this chaos.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in Surah Ali Imran, just so we're not painting everybody with the same brush, I think these two verses are very relevant. In one verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ مَنْ إِن تَأْمَنْهُ بِقِنْطَارٍ يُؤَدِّهِ إِلَيْكَ ومنهم من إن تأمنه بدينار لا يؤديه إليك إلا ما دمت عليه قائما. So in of من للتبعيض here, it's of the people of the book that if you entrust them with a huge amount of wealth, they will readily and happily give it right back to you. But some of them, if you entrust them with just 1 dinar, meaning a very meager amount, they will not give it back to you until you stay running after them. Right? So clearly here, the Quran is not painting the Jews or the Christians with one brush. They're saying that they're not the same. In Surah Al-Imran, the same surah, Allah says, لَيْسُوا سَوَاءً مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. They're not the same of the people of the book. Right?
And again, we don't approve, it's very clear. Like I opened up with the hadith, even in the Quran, human life is precious life. We talked about this before. Many of the many of the things that Islam espouses and whatnot. Let me get into this next tweet here. This is from our brother Zishan, Smile the Jannah. He says the U.S. government doesn't have money to solve the plight of its citizens, but it has plenty to support the occupation and oppression of Palestinians. Then we wonder why it's so messed up there. Here are 8 billion reasons why. And now you just have here, U.S. President Biden approves emergency military aid package to Israel, $8 billion.
And we have people laying on the ground outside of hotels in the middle of downtown in tents in many populated cities, metropolis cities, big cities here in America. You're telling me our own citizens here, and I speak here as an American, you're telling me that they are not more deserving of that money? You have people laying in tents, people after the pandemic losing their homes, families being destroyed because of the economic stress that it took took a toll on them. But we have money just to send off left and right. Yeah, this is going to anger a lot of people. We, the taxpayers.
And I wanted to really push that point home that, again, this is not something that is where Muslims are just hate Jews. You have this professor here. Why would, just for the thinking person, would this professor here, Jewish professor David Warrenstein, I've brought this up many times because it's so profound and powerful.
Right.
he, in his essay in the Jewish Chronicle, he said Islam saved the jury. How's Islam going to save you if it hates you? You know, if it's Muslims are called to terrorize, to hate you, to, you know, when Muslims are saving you. And this is in essence to, you know, the time when they were being persecuted, Albania, Turkey, Bosnia. They were running and being fled from persecution. In France, the Muslims at that time were putting their lives on the line to save the Jewish people. They were forging documents for them. You know about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's because Islam teaches us to stand up for our principles, right? Another verse that comes to mind is where Allah says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. Allah basically in the Quran says that Allah does not keep you from being good to those who did not fight you for your religion or drive you out of your homes. These are the two conditions, right? So being good, extending the helping hand, right? Being just towards them. This is a religious obligation, even to the atheist. You might have some atheists who are watching this. Like when you see someone who is in need of help, although even if they're an atheist, they don't believe in God, right? I, as a Muslim, it is still my duty and obligation to help them if I can give and extend the helping hand.
Islam clearly condemns, I've repeated it so many times, the killing of non-combatants, innocent men, women, and children. This is very clear. What could Jordan Peterson, if you were going to have a message for him, he obviously had, maybe still has some who are not aware, but now more people are going to be aware of his stance and, you know, towards this whole thing. What do you think he could be doing differently? Because you admire some of his work, I did also. But the direction he's going, many people are saying he's just bought now, and he's really not on the line of truth. What would you say he can do differently, Jordan Peterson, if he listens to this?
When Palestine is free, people like him are going to be ashamed that they did this. He's going to be embarrassed that he did this.
I think he's being extremely biased. I think he's looking at things from one side, and of course there are always two sides to a story. But I don't think he's had enough time to kind of dig thoroughly and seriously and diligently as to what in the world is taking place on the other side. And him, being who he is, owes it to himself expediently and urgently to take a look as to what's happening on the other side. And then you feel free and you're welcome to tweet whatever it is that you feel. But don't base your judgment off of this one-sided, skewed nonsense. Do your research, study the same way you've done your studies for everything else. Diligently and thoroughly scrutinize what is taking place in that part of the world before tweeting this nonsense.
And I don't think anybody with a heart, anybody who is a well-wisher for anybody, to look at the oppression that's happening. I mean, just people being treated worse than animals. I mean,
it's a present day apartheid.
People get upset if you mistreated an animal, let alone a human being. You know what I mean?
Where's Human Rights Watch? Where are they in all this?
Yeah, many have condemned, but the global elites and people, the movers and shakers, they're silent to these oppressions that are happening. And I think good-hearted Americans and others out there, I often recommended the book of Miko Pillid, some of his because he's an Israeli Jew. Right. His father was the original signer of the Declaration of Independence for Israel.
Sure.
Right? So he is really somebody who's putting his neck on the line. And look at some of these other people like Rabbi Weiss, Shapiro, and look what they're saying.
Sure.
They're Jewish.
Sure.
One is Jewish or Israeli, and see the other side of the coin. Why are they coming out and speaking on behalf of the oppressed? Because they're oppressed, and they're people who don't like to see oppression. So with that said, thank you very much for helping us cover this briefly. And we wish that truth and peace and all the good prevails, because we really want to live in peace with our neighbors and the rest of mankind.
Indeed we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we started with peace, we'll end with peace. Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you brothers as well. Barakallah for the guest of Eddie, as well as his channel. He's done a fantastic job over the years. I've been following the Deenshow since it started many years ago now, from the early days. It's amazing. It does an amazing job. It puts everything in the correct perspective. It provides evidence and facts from this particular stream. I really enjoyed watching it, and I hope my viewers also enjoyed, inshallah, and benefited, and even my non-Muslim friends and my European friend that was having a brief discussion with me online regarding these people shouldn't be fighting over borders and everyone should live peace and harmony. This is exactly what we're calling for. We're calling for correct way of life. Basically, people should respect each other, and it can start by lifting the occupation on Palestine and allowing people to go back pre-1948 and pre-1900 even, when the British were occupying Egypt, and all these European nations that entered and invaded other people's countries, exploited and stole their resources. It all should be returned to the rightful owners, and we should respect each other and appreciate each other, because we're all our brothers and sisters in humanity. We're all originated from the same creator, whether you believe it or not. There's only one creator, and if you submit your will to the will of the creator who created you and me, then you are a Muslim. And if you believe in all the scriptures that came down from the creator, then you are a Muslim. If you believe in the prophets, then you're a Muslim. But if you don't, you're still a human being. You have every right to live. No one has a right to harm you in any way, or insult you, harm you physically or emotionally or psychologically. No one has a right. There's no compulsion in religion. La ikraha fi din. You cannot force anyone to believe in something or disbelieve something. Respect how they chose to live their life. You just focus on yourself. Try to make yourself a better, more productive, more beneficial human being. Because that's your purpose. This is why Allah created us. He created us for that one purpose. To serve mankind. To serve all the creations of God. Show kindness and compassion to all the creation. Not just human beings, even the animals. So focus on yourself. Don't insult others. But at the same time, the people, the new generation that came in, they don't know the facts. They don't know the reality, how things were 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Look into history. Learn from history. Not the fabricated history where the victor writes the history and, excludes certain facts out. But start reading into the subject. Look into the facts of when was Zionism created? What was the agenda of Zionism? What was the agenda of white supremacists? Or creating a superior race? What was the agenda of Hitler and his party, for example, for trying to exterminate the Jews and trying to create a superior race? So look at this, and you will, if you have a brain, even one cell of a brain, and you have a pure heart, without being prejudiced of anything, it will not make sense to you. How could God create a superior race and choose a particular race? If you belong to this particular bloodline, you deserve to live. You deserve to the right to own all the resources of the world and control the world, and everyone else is created to be at your service, be your slaves. You just take for your selfish greed. Why would there be unequal distribution of wealth? These rules are not God's rules. They're not divine rules. Distribution should be equally resources should be equally distributed. Everyone has a right to live, food, shelter, has a right to all these things. There shouldn't be any discrimination or exploitation. The only entity that will benefit from all this and wishes to see the destruction of the human race is Iblis, Satan, because he envies the human beings. He envied Adam for being chosen as a representative on earth. He envies us. He's our open enemy. So don't take him as your friend. And I feel sad and sorry for all the Arab leaders, irrespective of their position, whether they're a president or they're just a minister. I feel sorry for them because they should know better. It tells you clearly in the Quran, don't fear them, but fear me, fear Allah. You should have more fear of Allah than you fear America, than you fear Israel, than you fear anyone else. Allah is the real superpower. Stop living like cowards. And if you're a coward in leading a country, then maybe you should step down and allow someone that has a heart and has respect and stronger faith than you to lead a country and defend our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Now, my opinion of the whole situation, and this is just my opinion, my own analysis of the situation, I believe this whole thing was orchestrated. There's absolutely no way that this surprise attack could have taken place, by the way. It was under the supervision of the Netanyahu government, the right-wing government. And I believe they did this intentionally, this false flag operation, and they allowed Hamas and everybody to enter and actually allowed them to some sort of victory in their assault. I'm not going into whether it's right or wrong now. I'm just telling you exactly what they might have intended to do, was to unite, to create a united government, because everything was falling apart amongst, in politics, in the political arena in Israel. And they wanted to unite all parties. So what do? They allow Hamas to go through. And they have people, they're inside all these parties, inside all these political parties in Palestine, Hamas and the Al-Aqsa Brigade, whatever. They have these spies in there, and they can get them to go to work and start to give up ideas. Oh, we can do this or we can do that. So they can motivate that particular unit to go to work with the help of people from the inside in Israel. So they can orchestrate this whole thing and create this whole propaganda. So then they can then have all the citizen support, all the political support, all the United Nations support to advance on a ground offensive in Gaza and invade Gaza and say, that's it, we're not going to trust Hamas again, we're not going to trust any the Palestinians to create this border and to blockade them in. So what we're going to do, we're going to destroy them, we're going to carpet bomb them, we're going to kill every Palestinian, like you've heard from these extremists, death to the Arabs. That's what they want. They want to drive this more. They want to create more right-wing. They want to create more racist. They want to breed more hate. And then they want to invade Gaza. And next stop would be Egypt. They'll do a preemptive strike on Egypt. So if Egypt doesn't do anything now, and they do not step in now to stop this war, next stop would be Egypt, because they're planning, the whole agenda is to expand the borders. Palestine was not enough for them. Their eyesight is on Egypt. That's the next stop. Their eyesight is on Lebanon, Syria, this whole region, even parts of Turkey. But we are ruled, I'm talking about the Arabs now, Arab nations, Arab countries, they're ruled by cowards. 1967 wouldn't have been a defeat of Egypt if it wasn't for the cowards that were in the government ruling Egypt that pulled back the forces. They had no chance to win. Egypt wouldn't have been invaded. Sinai wouldn't have been invaded in 1967. The war wouldn't have been over in 6 days. It would have been reversed on the 7th day. But because of the corruption, because of the traitors in the governments, they caused this defeat. In 1973 as well, there were good people that were fighting for the liberation of Sinai, and they were succeeding. But because of the corruption in the governments in Egypt, because they have their own agents that are planted in senior positions in governments and in all levels in Egyptian society, they put them to work. Because there wouldn't be in Israel today. There wouldn't be in this occupation. It may have been called still Israel. There's nothing wrong with the word Israel, but it would have been a free Palestine. Doesn't matter what you name a country. Doesn't matter what your name is. It's how you carry yourself, your character. So it's not about the name. It's not about you call the street this name or that name. It's not about the name. It's about the respect, the democracy, the human rights. Understand this. No one's against a name, naming a nation, Palestine or Israel, or call it whatever. But it's about everyone has an equal right. Everyone is an equal citizen. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all cooperated together and being economic, productive human beings, serving each other, making this world a better place for everybody. So it's not about discrimination or killing a certain race group and whatever. Islam has no room for racism. Islam has no room for harming any human beings. And Brother Eddie made that clear during his presentation, during his podcast. Even in engagement in war, you should avoid harming other civilians, women and children. You cannot harm them. You cannot poison water. You cannot chop down trees. You cannot harm the environment or animals or anything like that. You can only fight those who fight you. Someone's about to kill me. Someone's got a gun on me. I have every right to defend myself. But if someone submits and says, I don't want to fight, you have to leave them in peace. If someone seeks protection from you, irrespective of whatever, even if they were previously an enemy to you, and now they're coming, running to you, asking you for protection, you have to protect them. You have to protect them against yourself even. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessing be upon him, entered Mecca, and the same murderers who murdered his uncle, the same people that harmed his family and stole his wealth, he did not take any revenge for them. He was a prophet of mercy. He showed them peace. If you're surrendering, you're in peace. No harm. If you fight, we'll fight. But if you submit, then you can live your life the way you want to live it. I'm not going to impose our way of life on you. You don't impose your way of life on us. We respect each other. And many of these enemies from the past reverted to Islam. Some didn't, some did. No one was forced to leave the country. And in this podcast as well, from the Deenshow, he spoke about Omar ibn al-Khattab when he entered Jerusalem. And he noticed that the Temple Mount was used as a rubbish dump. He cleaned it up himself. And the other Muslims participated in the cleanup process. And then he started to invite anyone who's ethnically Jew, anyone that's following the Torah, the people of the book, Jews, Christians, welcome to this land. You have every right to live here. Come back. And we'll protect you. We'll give you your rights. Jews were invited in Islamic governments. They were allowed to prosper, create businesses, contribute to sciences, take political positions in governments. They weren't excluded. They were allowed to participate and join in the whole political process. So this is Islam. Islam is beautiful. It's all about peace. It's about fulfilling our obligation on this world. And the obligation is to serve others. Service to many leads to greatness. Being productive, cooperating, and our private belief, what each individual's own preferred way of life, should be respected. You do what's best for your way of life without harming anyone, and they do their best as long as they don't interfere with other people's way of life. They don't harm anyone, any other human beings. The whole concept of terrorism does not exist in Islam. That concept of terrorism was created, invented by the British. When the British occupied Egypt, when they occupied the Middle Eastern countries, they started teaching the ignorant, barbaric, illiterate people. They started teaching them how to do terrorist attacks, how to destroy a railway track that was used for pilgrims to travel from Istanbul in Turkey all the way to Mecca to perform their pilgrimage. Unarmed people. And they started teaching these rebels in so-called the land of Saudi Arabia today to bomb and destroy infrastructure, countries' infrastructure. They didn't know how to do all this stuff. The British, the ones under the guidance of Lawrence of Arabia, who was a shallow human being, to destroy infrastructure, countries' infrastructure, destroy their own country, carry out terrorist attack against civilians, to create fear and chaos. This is an invention, concoction by the British authority, the occupiers that were occupying Egypt at the time. Don't you notice a trend? It's exactly what the Israelis are doing. They're fabricating, creating new so-called Islamic state and all this nonsense that goes on to create this fear, create an enemy, just like they hijacked an ethnic group, the Jews, and they created this ideology called Zionism. Likewise, they started hijacking Islam, creating other cults like ISIS and all these other nonsense that goes on, terror groups, trained and supplied the weapons, all supplied from Israel, and they carry out terrorist attacks. Why can't the world see that? You have to open your eyes and recognize this. Do you know once ISIS, you can Google it, you can check it out online, they accidentally attacked Israeli soldiers. Accidentally. It was unintentional. They were trying to attack other Arabs, other Muslims. They were trying to kill other Muslims. They're supposed to be an Islamic terrorist group and they were killing Muslims. Doesn't make sense. But they accidentally attacked an Israeli platoon. And then the leader of ISIS made a formal apology to Israelis. Oh, this was an accident. We was trying to kill Syrians. We was trying to kill some Muslims. Muslims trying to kill Muslims. Does it make sense? They made an apology, a formal apology. Please forgive us. We made a mistake, oh master, to the Israelis. Because it was the same organization. They attacked their own kind. Because of fabrication. All these terror groups, they're all orchestrated, they're invented by the same people that are fighting them. Or at least in the media, they claim to be enemies. They're all friends. They're working to implement the same agenda and to destroy any peace-loving human beings. That's why all the good people, they get silenced on YouTube. They get silenced on all this social media. Not because they're spreading misinformation, but because they're spreading truth. They're telling you the facts. And if you don't believe it, go research it yourself. Go read up on history from all corners to get a more complete picture. It's like you're watching a news broadcast on several channels, and in between you can read between the lines, and someone's going to slip up somewhere and say the truth, or you might see a clip of the event or something, and you might see that what they're reporting contradicts to that particular live broadcast that they were making, and they try to edit it later on to make it more towards their agenda. So you have to be very careful with these things. You have to be very careful of the deception that's going on. So I want you to make up your mind. And if I've said anything wrong in this live stream or any other live stream that I've made, please correct me. I value constructive criticism, but correct me with facts. Come up with facts and show me the evidence behind it. If I've said anything wrong, go research it yourself and then come up with facts. Don't go with, like, you're so heated and I am X, Y, Z, or this is my ethnicity, you're attacking my people. Forget about that. Don't unite under nationalism, because there's no nationalism in Islam. We're all one. We shouldn't have all these borders and divisions, and you're a Pakistani and you're Chinese and you're Indian. No, none of that. We're all brothers. We're all humans. That's what we should unite under. We are all the human race. We're all creations of God. That is what we should unite on. And I'm also sick and tired of even the Muslim communities where they divide people based on their race. They shouldn't do that. We're all united as one. We're all Muslims. We're all human beings. Brothers and sisters. Anyway, I don't want to keep this stream too long. We're going to be approaching 1 o'clock, inshallah, soon. So it's going to be time for Zohr soon. And I'll probably have to go. So I wish you peace. And inshallah, again, I will do another live stream and any updates on the events in Gaza. May Allah protect Gaza and protect the Gazan people. They're very brave. From amongst them, they're true men. MashaAllah, I'm inspired and really proud of them. The men that stand up to protect their land and their people and fighting the enemies of Allah, the Satanists, the people that hate peace, that are bloodthirsty. They're not cowards. They don't bow down when it comes to that fight. They stand up and fight back. And they protect their homes until they die as heroes, as martyrs. And inshallah, they're in paradise. And they're the highest ranks in paradise because they deserve it. If anyone deserves to go to paradise, it's the Gazan people. People that don't sell out, because amongst them there are traitors as well. That, they sell out for money, for worldly things. So we don't want to be amongst those traitors that betray their country, betray God. What do you think? What will happen to them? They can't repent to Allah on these things. These are the sort of things that you cannot repent. You betray Allah, you betray your people, you betray your religion, you betray all of humankind. And now you think just because you pray, just because you fast Ramadan, that's it, everything's going to be forgiven? It's not going to be forgiven. You've harmed other human beings. You're going to have to pay a very expensive price to that. What you do in your private life is different. You prayed, fasted, whatever, it's for your own benefit. But now you go harm other human beings. You betray your country. You betray your people. You're not going to be forgiven until they forgive you. I died because of you, O traitor. Khayin. I'll leave you in peace, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care for now.